Hi there, Mark Vergeer here, and I thought it would be time for an actual pickups video and a bit of a room tour. And the room tour is a tour of my study. I've severely decluttered it, and I actually really like it right now. So I'll change around the camera and I'll show you its features. So my room has a forbidden to enter sign. It's a Dutch sign, and it's a very recognizable sign that a lot of Dutch will instantly recognize. And it's actually a law article that makes it more official, but it isn't actually. And the room is also recognizable by me going mad with the lettering printer thingy, the label thingy, and it says lactose study. So time to open the door. Now, you people who have been watching the channel before and have seen the room before will find it very familiar, but it's severely decluttered. And what has changed is that actually quite a few elements have been removed. So I have my desk, which is a former dining room table, and it's I believe it's a white oak, which has darkened over time. It has been treated, but it has nicely darkened, and it's a very nice old-fashioned desk. On it is a ultra-wide 49-inch Samsung 1080p screen, and hooked up to it is a little red Dell Inspiron and a self-built Ryzen 3900X or something like that. On the table you can actually see an alcohol-free Radler beer and a stack of pickups. Now I'll pan to the right and you'll see the room, one of the windows, the two windows of the room, and on the shelf is Mrs. and Mr. Lactobacillus prime. Yeah, I have a fascination with cows. You can actually see that from that painting and also that painting on top of the printer stand. And yeah, Mrs. and Mr. Lactobacillus prime. Yeah, there's like a Scottish theme to it. And yeah, Mrs. Lactobacillus prime, she's in bikini and she's talking on the cell phone, and yeah, what have you. And this actually is a ceramic cactus, and fitted with it inside is an RGB light, so I can have it shine different colors. The cactus itself is actually blue, but by changing the color within, you can actually make it appear all sorts of colors, like purple, green, blue, whatever, yellow even. And the printer stand and the rest, it houses all sorts of, it houses old laptops, it houses all sorts of camera gear, handhelds, and desk office supply thingies. Yeah, the printer is, we've hooked it up to none of the systems. It's actually a Wi-Fi printer scanner combination that seems to work really well. The best place for it is in my room. For some reason I use the scanner more than Elise, and Elise uses the printer more. But yeah, it's good. Let me see if I pan around. And you shouldn't do that actually with the camera, just to swing it around. There's a Billy case, and it actually houses a collection of anime DVDs and some other special DVDs that hold some specific meaning to me. And then there's a whole set of compact cassette tapes, some empty ones, some pre-recorded ones, and there's also a place for my Apple gear boxes. On top I have Spark, Joy, a game room, all sorts of paraphernalia. Mary Kondo, I used her technique to actually get rid of a lot of stuff and things that hold meaning. They just don't clutter up the shelves. I just put them in Spark Joy boxes, and everything inside sparks some wonderful feeling or memory. Below that is, and yeah, I've actually gotten rid of quite a few of my professional books. That is, I didn't throw them away, but they're in the bookcase in the attic. There's all sorts of books on psychiatry, psychology that I actually rarely use. I don't want to throw them away, but yeah, it's good to keep them, but not in my room. I want to have stuff in my room that I can enjoy. So on the bottom shelf, there's not really stuff that I can enjoy, but it's like manuals, notepads, personal stuff, financial stuff, and that kind of stuff. And then there's some magazines for work, some professional magazines, and an inbox for post. Everybody Loves Me, Lee Sklar. It's a very great book. He published it in his own with his own with his own funds and stuff, and it's actually a whole collection of people flipping him the bird. He has been doing that ever since he was touring. He's a famous bass player, and he's actually been very prolific online with the whole COVID thing. He actually has a YouTube channel. He's actually quite successful in making all sorts of videos showing off the bass lines and stuff, the bass line, the bass lines. Very cool to see the bass in a track of music getting more attention, because I actually really like bass and rhythm and percussion, just because it like complements the music, and it's very easy to go for the main tune or the main instrument or the vocals, but bass, percussion, really it adds to it. Below that is some pixel art. The Donkey Kong I did. The Boulder Dash was done by Natalie, and I'm just a big fan of this. It's Rockford from Boulder Dash, and it's a really nice sign. There's a funny thing, because she sent it to me with a photograph, and when she was laying it out, I think it only fell to the floor once or twice or something, but she showed me a picture of all these beads scattered across the floor after she assembled it all and stuff. So yeah, it took quite some time and some nerves to actually get that together. And then there's a section of computer books, and also Commodore Forever and Amiga Forever, discs, some mugs. And before that, I figured I better use some of my picture frames for something that is actually interesting. And recently, I've been really enjoying Amiga, but also the works of Mr. Sachs, a prolific bitmap artist on Amiga, but also a game programmer. And this palace, it's a big house with woodwork, is a famous picture of him. The Amiga ball and stuff, that's actually part of a cover of a demo series. And this is a photo or a picture, bitmap picture from 20,000 Leagues or Miles Under Sea. There's actually another picture that's also from his from that, and that's also a sunken ship. Now, of course, I didn't frame these professionally. They're just prints, color prints on regular paper. I didn't use the Passepartout. I didn't want the images too small. And there's actually a bit cut off from the pictures, but yeah, I really like to have them side by side. And then there's the Edge magazines that I kept, that I actually threw out a lot in a fit of, how do you say that, mental blockage, mental constipation. And actually I got rid of more than 2/3 of my Edge magazines, and I kept the ones that I like the special ones on Rock Band, 3DS, Need for Speed, Crisis, a lot of the specific special moments in time. And I figured, why hold on to all the magazines, and why not keep the ones that actually mean a lot? And there's some special magazines in there that handle systems that are really interesting, or games and stuff. So yeah, I did the same, and there's actually Elise in various age incarnations. There's actually a lot of 80s and 90s computer magazines. Some of them are a bit newer, like Chip is from the 2005 and stuff. 2003 CT, Computer Technology. I actually read a lot of German magazines. German is not my first language, but yeah, the Netherlands is next to Germany. I actually know and speak German quite well. So for me, actually, there's no difference between reading German or Dutch or English for that matter. For some reason, a 2019 IKEA brochure. Yeah, call me crazy, but I really enjoy IKEA. Yeah, me going crazy with the labeler, totally ADHD. Yeah, I was diagnosed with ADHD a little over a year ago, and it really changed a lot of things for me, and it made a lot of things clear. You know, I'm not like I'm not defining myself as I'm Mark, I'm ADHD and so forth and so forth. But yeah, getting diagnosed at a later age, well, yeah, you get some things about your life, and finally things make sense. So yeah, good stuff. Some more magazines. These are actually Games TM. Some old comics, Kuifje, Tintin comics. That is not the Tintin albums, but actually a series, a magazine focusing on the art of Tintin, Kuifje, and other stuff. Really very famous in the 70s and 80s in the Netherlands and Belgium. Some more retro gamer magazines. Yeah, I put them in order, which is actually quite rare for me. Next to it, Frasier and Jolly Jumper from Looky Luke. That's also quite amazing. And I figured Frasier would go amazingly well next to Retro Gamer. And Frasier, him being a psychiatrist and me being a psychiatrist, this actually is the perfect background when I do meetings over Skype or Teams and stuff. Then actually I can have this background and they actually see Frasier, Retro Gamer. I used to have a Commodore 128 box on top, so I'm really not hiding my retro computing, retro gaming nerd entity anymore from work. I used to do that. My prior job actually required that of me. They just didn't want to have any specific personality traits show. We just had to be like these bland, inaccessible people. That didn't work, so I changed jobs, and I'm more myself now than ever before. So, and these are a few books, some psychiatric magazines, and I made a bit of an altar, some old soy sauce jars. One would hope, these were like sake flasks, but no, just crackle-aid soy sauce bottles. And soy sauce, it's quite a thing, and it's quite a thing in Japan, and it's not a very simple thing. So yeah, good soy sauce is a rare thing, and these bottles, well, they're quite nice. And Elise actually was doing some textile prints, and she actually created this bamboo art, and I thought it would be interesting to frame that. I liked it a lot. This is a lava light. You can turn it on. Let me see if I can do that. Show the camera work, and then it just glows. And I'm quite a fan of the wave, and this is just a print of the wave. And this is my teddy bear, and I turned 51 this year, and this teddy bear was bought by my Uncle Pete, and I think not soon after he learned that my mom was pregnant with me. So this bear is even older than me. So you're looking at a 51 plus year old teddy bear, and it's really weird, but your own teddy bear, your old teddy bear. You know his face, and he's a bit barren. He's just a bit tattered, but yeah, it's just a personality. You know, it's just my bear, and it's more than just a stuffed toy. It's my bear, and yeah. So that actually basically is my bookshelf. And it used to house a lot of, you know, it used to be overstocked, and it's still actually quite full, but to have it, yeah, to have less in it is actually impossible for me. This is a very nice chair, an IKEA chair with, yeah, of course, already clutter on it. Basically, someone can sit in it, at least sometimes sit in it if you want to talk or stuff. And this desk, this actually houses a lot of health health things, you know, like medicine and blood pressure, you know, stethoscope and that kind of stuff. Below that is office supplies, but also computer things like portable drives, USB plugs and stuff. And the other one also below is also on. On it is a very nice little IKEA lamp, which is a bit of a cyberpunk throwback, which is actually, it looks like an oil lamp. It has a brown matte metal finish, and it has a black, what is it, knitted wire. And actually this controller also has a black knitted wire, and the connection also has a bit of a cyberpunk feel. Yeah, a portable monitor, a widescreen monitor, Samsung 768p or something like that. A resolution at a lot of standard definition, or what is it? HD ready TVs had back in the day. It has, what is it? VGA and HDMI inputs. No, I wish. It only has VGA inputs. But I have an HDMI to a VGA adapter to it. But this actually is a monitor that I use for, you know, the Raspberry Pis, a PC. This is a Dell Optiplex 9010. It's one of these office systems that has quite a decent processor in it. It's like a 3070 or something. It's a third generation Ivy Bridge, I think it is. i7. It's not a K model, it's an i7. It boosts up to 3.9 gigahertz, and it's a small form factor system. You can't put a low profile GTX 1050 in it, but what works in it is actually a GTS or a GT 1030 2GB card. If you get the one with a high DDR, then it's actually quite a decent card. A phone is on it, and a little Bluetooth bamboo speaker I got from work, Logitech keyboard, and I really like a mouse. So I actually have a mouse from a mouse keyboard combination that I paired to the, what is it, that uni USB plug. Logitech has like this uniform Bluetooth-like adapter that you can actually pair more systems on it. Actually, this mouse is part of a keyboard combination that this actually is. I use this on both my Dell Inspiron as well as my self-built, and it's actually hidden quite well. Yeah, a Ryzen 9 3900X. That actually is my video editing rig. I really like it, but it's like crazy powerful. It has an RTX 3060 Ti in it, and I pre-ordered that, and I was very patient, but when it became available, I actually still got it for MSRP plus a bit more. I believe 50 more or something like that. It wasn't hugely expensive, but yeah. Next to it is a Rocket studio monitor pair, both sides. I actually have them hooked up to a Bluetooth audio receiver, and both of my systems, both of my PCs actually have their audio ported to the Bluetooth speaker, a Bluetooth adapter, and actually it switches on the sound through these studio monitors. Yeah, for some reason, the Samsung HDMI audio or the audio out socket on this monitor has just given up the ghost. It just doesn't work. So of course I like my poos, so that's actually a battery, but it also weighs down the USB hubs. For some reason these USB hubs are less heavy than the cables that are attached to them, so you really have to weigh them down. A game over mug, a wireless card that I thought I could fit in my wife's computer to have like an access point in her PC. The Wi-Fi is really spotty in her room, and I've got an Asus 5300 router, and I figured I could with iMesh I could have a fancy pants, how do you say that, Wi-Fi extender thing. And actually what is advertised is that this thing, which now is a media bridge, so I can have this system and some other systems hooked up over the Wi-Fi. This actually is the green cable is actually the wired Ethernet wires that I pulled all through the house. But yeah, I could run another cable or just have like a hub there. I didn't, and I just used this. But this actually is supposed to work with the AI mesh system from Asus, but for some reason it doesn't. They just don't want to talk to each other. And you can put this wired UTP, and you can use this as an access point, an extra access point, and it supposedly should work with the router, and they communicate with each other and they figure out the different channels that they can broadcast their Wi-Fi networks on. You can actually have the same Wi-Fi network or have different ones, but they should not interfere with one another. Of course, contrary to what is being advertised, they interfere with one another. And it's a really convoluted thing because they advertise with iMesh, AI mesh capable routers, and when you buy them, they're just not capable. And that's also because in the meantime, they went from version 1 of the standard to version 2 of the standard, and there's no mesh standard in Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is a whole big mess, and a single company can't even stick to their own standard or have the standard 1 and 2 be interchangeable, like a lot of the Wi-Fi standards sort of are. But yeah, I used to have a lot of these systems combined with the router that I just mentioned. Just distribute the internet all throughout my house. I used to have one of these and have all my systems hooked up to that. So it was an access point. Basically, this is a Wi-Fi client, and it just bridges over the air the internet. I did have sockets, but they were unpopulated. They were ISDN telephone wires that just didn't work. So I just took out the sockets and just pulled some Cat 6 wires or Cat 7, and it works well with my gigabit Ethernet. What is it? Gigabit internet. But yeah, I'm already maxed out because if for some reason the glass fiber, the fiber optic the fiber optic internet supplier actually ups the speed, my wired network would not support it because yeah, it maxes out at 1 gigabit. So it's like super fast, and it's a symmetrical internet line. So yeah, uploading YouTube videos, uncompressed 13 gigabytes really goes fast. And updates for Microsoft and Microsoft Xbox and PlayStation 4, they still go slow as molasses. So, doesn't matter, still slow as molasses. Now, what I did add, I took out a shelving unit, and I had a very narrow shelving unit, so the corners of the room were actually more visible, but for some reason it just cluttered up a lot. So yeah, on this desk actually was my stereo, my retro stereo system, a Pioneer stereo system. It had a receiver, a tape deck, a graphical equalizer, and a Pioneer CD player. And they were all very similar or higher specs than my original system back in the day. Now, I listened to the radio quite a bit, and I actually played the tapes quite a bit. The graphical equalizer, I really don't use that much. It's more for show. And the CD player, well, it was a very basic model, and it worked very well. And I've always enjoyed my CDs, but I always found them to be a little, how do you say that? Pioneer CD players, the ones that I used, even the more high-end ones, they lacked severely in dynamics. You know, it was like the sound was very flat. So a lot of the nuances you missed. You know, it's like listening to a very bad monotape. That sounds really good, but my father-in-law, Karel, he was an engineer for years at Philips, and he was involved with the audio-visual department. And Karel has been the source of a lot of technological gadgets or old stock materials over the years. And believe it or not, at some point I found this unprotected in his wood shed, you know, in the elements. He couldn't bear to throw it away, but he also couldn't bear to take care of it. So it was like left out there in the elements, sort of sheltered for, well, quite a few weeks, months or so. But I got very curious, so I looked it up, and I found out that this actually is what it looks like. It's a very high-end professional CD player, and it's built like a brick, and it works. I took it home. There's no oxidation, so the connectors are really well built. Yeah, probably not any water, you know, got on it. It was just the weather and the elements, but not like humid rain dripping into it. So it survived really well. The only thing that actually is wrong with it, if you can say that there is something wrong with it, is that a couple of the keys, probably the keys that have been used more than others, like the pause and the play and the volume, perhaps the oils of the fingers, because these keys are a bit matte, that they changed color a bit, so they yellowed a bit. And this actually is a CD player that is like a wedge. And a lot of the audio decks from back in the day, they had this slanting slope, you know, this ergonomic slope. And you can also drop it in. There's like a lip on the side that actually let you sink it in a little square, and the top will just hold it in place, and you have room enough to for all the connections. There's DSLR hookups. There's all sorts of audiovisual hookups, and the thing is that this system really is going for crazy prices on eBay. You know, some are sold for spare parts. Some of them even, you know, crazy, you know, like $2,000 prices and stuff. It's really weird, but you know, I cleaned it up, I hooked it up, and it has the most amazing sound. You know, even with my SX777, which is not a high-end Pioneer stereo receiver, but it's not like the low end. You know, it's a decent receiver, and I got BNS. I think it's 8 ohm resistors, 80 watt speakers, 2 of them, and combined with the audio quality of this Studer A73, what is it, 730, actually is amazing. There's this sampler. there's this sampler, this presentation sampler that has a lot of classical music on it that is like really popular, you know, like the three tenors and stuff, but also like Vivaldi and stuff. And it really, oh, there's a bit of dust on it. Really, you really notice the difference in sound quality when you play this compared to the regular Pioneer DVD player that actually goes in with this system. But it also offered a solution for it, because I just couldn't bear to listen to the old Pioneer anymore, because this actually is the best sounding CD player I actually ever had access to, and it makes CDs become more alive to me than ever before. Actually, CDs can sound a lot better than you think if you have access to a very high-end CD player. It really makes a lot of difference. Same goes for tapes. This is not the highest end tape deck, but it's like a good tape deck. It doesn't have any auto reverse. It's the CT-S410, I believe. It has like all the Dolby noise reductions and stuff, and it has all sorts of fancy bands. You can let it communicate with a system wire, with a receiver, and a Pioneer DVD player. Well, that's not possible when you use a Studer, but it actually is a very great and very reliable tape player. And I was actually listening to a tape. I can get it. And there's actually, I got quite a few classical tapes, like Tina Turner, Private Dancer. That's a classical album. It's not a classical album, it's a classic album. And it's been recorded with the Dolby signal, but if you play it and you play it without Dolby, it actually sounds a lot better than with Dolby. I'm one of these folk that really doesn't like Dolby B that much, or C for that matter. But this really sounds very amazing. The tape deck actually has a very high frequency response, and it actually is very, very dynamic. So I'm really stoked to have like this more minimalistic audio setup that is retro enough for me, but actually looks and sounds good. And next to it is actually a clock that looks like a Nixie clock, but isn't. It's also a bit of a pickup. This is one of these Nixie clock projects where this clock actually, instead of real Nixie tubes, this actually has very bright, cool OLED screens or something like that. Behind those screens is actually a multicolored LED, and you can set the color. Now, with these pictures, these images that you can actually upload from your computer, there's a couple of predefined images, and you can upload your own set. If you set the background LED to the predominant color featured in the images, and this is like an orange, orangey, reddish Nixie tube thing, then it looks like a real Nixie tube. It looks like there's actual glowing tubes shining their light, so it really presents a very realistic effect. Now, what also is cool is that I have created a different set that looks similar, but I just changed the color to like this blue fluorescent, which is very similar to that found on European and Japanese Samsung Pioneer sets, like that. In the same sets in America have orange fluorescent lights, which are actually very similar to this color. And in Europe and Japan, we seem not to like that orange screen that much. There were Technic sets and other sets that actually came out with the orange LCD, or the fluorescent displays, but I think a lot of people actually went for the blue fluorescent. Now, I have yeah, I don't know if I can switch. I'll make another video to show it, but you can actually have the backlight switch to blue and just have these, these images display the blue images, and yeah, you really get a different atmosphere. Now I found out after that, I found this myself, and I was actually quite stoked with that. But I also found a video that like one day prior or something like that, Techmoan, a famous YouTuber, I think he is located around Manchester. He actually uploaded a video where he actually reviews this clock. Now I have another one of these clocks that he also, a different type of clock, which has, how do you say that, plastic filaments with etching in it, and it actually has LEDs, multicolored LEDs that actually shoot up through these glass panes, and it just creates the effect in a very different way. It was a Chinese Kickstarter that you can also buy after the Kickstarter stopped. But the thing is, that clock I did buy after I had seen his video, and this clock I just discovered myself. And it turns out that Techmoan actually also he was offered to the unit for review or something like that. So I got it. You could say great minds think alike or something like that. But yeah, it's a very nice clock, and it's very nice. I mean, the door to my study is always open, and if you walk up the stairs, later in the evening or something like that, the first thing you see is actually the time peeking through the open doorway, and it's actually quite nice. This is an RGB light fit in this, I think, quite stylish lamp shade thing. This actually is a charger for the iPhone or other wireless charging units. And yeah, this is just my own build system. It's a Charcoon case. It has an all-in-one liquid water cooler. The only one that is liquid water cooled still. No. Yeah. No. I need to replace the liquid one. Did I replace it, or am I did replace a liquid water cooler for a no, I still have to. I built a couple of computers over the past weeks, and I have trouble remembering whether it was my own computer or if it was a computer for a friend, client that I built. But yeah, this has a 2-fan all-in-one liquid water cooler, and they were all the rage back in the day. 5 years ago, 4 years ago. Every tech YouTuber really promoted those water coolers because they were all the thing, they were more efficient and less noisy and stuff. Well, let me tell you, they are not less noisy, and not always are they more efficient. Actually, a very high density air-cooled block with very big fans that have a very good air pressure, but because they're big and they can generate a good air pressure with a very low RPM, these can actually be a lot less noisy and very efficient. Air actually is a very much better heat conductor than water actually is for some reason. Not really a big reason, because water is very hard to transport. And anyways, but yeah, it seems like liquid, all-in-one liquid coolers, they're just noisy, and the pumps get very noisy. And if you don't set a specific speed, it's really very noisy, even more annoying than, for example, the Ryzen Spire, that RGB thing that a lot of the Ryzen processors come with, that ramps up and ramps down a lot. And yeah, just the changes in the noise are just very irritating to me. And I'd much rather have the fans run at a specific speed, or a situation where the differences in RPM, the rotations, aren't that noticeable. And I find that with air coolers that have a diameter fan that is large enough to not have the RPMs change that much, even if you change the air pressure or something, you know, I really prefer that. So I actually have a couple of air coolers lined up to be replaced. This one actually has a C1 air cooler from, oh gosh, I forget. There's a build video on that on my channel. I replaced the cooler, the stock cooler, for this C1. Gosh, I forget the brand, but yeah, it was really cool. I think Greg Salazar actually showed one of these coolers, and it's a low profile cooler, but it has some issues with RAM that sticks up. Actually, a lot of the Noctua air coolers also have issues with RAM that sticks up, or the coolers are so high, they're towering so high that actually a lot of cases they're just like, you know, 3 millimeters, 4 millimeters too narrow for the coolers to actually fit. And I still have to check whether the air coolers that I got and I received, if they actually fit my cases. I'm not willing to. I got three of these Charcoon cases. They're just black slabs. They remind me of the black slabs in Space Odyssey 2001. You know, I'm like the chimp, you know, being scared and just daring to touch the slab. I feel that when I operate a system, I feel like a chimpanzee, and I prefer my PCs to actually look like the black slabs, the high-tech, unfathomable pieces of technology from the future that is just very intimidating, but that I, despite my fears, dare to touch and use, like the chimps in Space Odyssey 2001. Anyways, yeah, so I still have to replace air coolers and stuff. Well, next to the Dell is a series of optical media, DVD rewritable media, and yeah, I use DVDs and Blu-ray rewritables for storing some backups, some important backups, and I have them in different places. Rewritables actually keep the information fresh and accessible for much longer than CDRs. A lot of the CDRs, first generation CDRs, have lost their capacity to be read. There's quite huge differences in brands. I found that the Philips CDRs from really the first generation, like you had this Philips CDR 3610 and it was a white. It has a white font, a white face, and it had like this big red record button. I really loved the look of that CD rewriter. It was excellent for burning PlayStation CDRs, actually. A lot of these very early gold-colored CDRs from Philips, they actually still read well. And a lot of good brands as well. But there's also like brands that were very cheap that it's not around anymore. A lot of them just failed. So, but it's surprising how little of these CDR media actually survived the test of time. You know, they were promoted to facilitate lasting storage, but yeah, the membrane used in these CDRs that often was like a plastic or a polymer with organic materials in it, but light and just deteriorates it's like bit rot, like the same thing that had laser discs rot away. Well, the similar thing happens to CDRs, but also real CDs can also suffer from bit rot. Well, I did improve the wire management. Now this monitor is capable of using 5 inputs. And of course, at some point in time, I had a PC over here, I had a PC over here, and I had a PC over here, and I also had a Mac Mini over there, and that's actually more than 5 with a switch or something like that. But I had a lot of systems hooked up, and yeah, that's just too much, and you feel really cramped. And now I'm having this, this really nice space, and I use a board, just actually a shelving unit board, you know, like it's just like that. What is it? Very cheap stuff with laminated white on it as a backdrop, so I don't kick the wall, I don't kick the wires and stuff. And actually below there you can actually see the Bluetooth receiver that is actually hooked up to the KRK Rocket studio monitors that actually sound quite amazing. My brother-in-law, he had those at his workplace, and then he moved work and he had no room, no place for them, and he asked me if I wanted to buy them off him, and he really asked a very reasonable price for them, so I just got them off him, and they really sound better than a lot of these standard computer speakers, these gray standard computer systems with speakers with this porthole and a tweeter that sometimes wasn't a tweeter, and you know, a subwoofer that a lot of people had back in the day, and they were square on top and they were rounded on the bottom, and they had like this stand. One of them actually always had a power supply, volume, and a balance control, treble and bass sometimes, I think, and the other one was just a passive one that hooked up. But these actually sound a lot better. And the thing is, I needed to use the Bluetooth speaker because, well, I think the DA converter just you know just kicked the bucket in my system. It just didn't work anymore. Yeah, really weird. But the display is actually quite well. It features a very nice 144 hertz refresh rate, very low response. This is actually a very nice gaming monitor. A bit of a tangent here. It's just a video all over the place, but very low response time, like 1 millisecond, 2 millisecond. It's a 1080p screen. Let me turn around the video. So yeah, it's a 1080p screen. I'll turn around. It's a 1080p screen, but yeah, this pandemic year, it really has been a weird year. I suffered a breakdown the year before, and I was getting back to work. I got diagnosed with ADHD, turned 50, couldn't celebrate that, and just turned 50, you know, without any real attention being paid to it. I got infected. I had pretty nasty virus thing. Also had arthritis because of that, and that slowly went away. Then I got eye issues, and then it turns out that I have a puckered retina, where like bits of your eye are like your retina is just pulled from the back, so it's like a little tent thing, a slope thing that happens. And with me, it just happens right in the center of your eye, where you see the clearest. It's like the fovea centralis. It's like a little, they call it the yellow spot sometimes, where you actually have the most perfect vision. Well, that's just ruined with one of my eyes, and the other eye is not really that much better. So it's really weird. I have very bad eyesight, and yet I have a 1.6 vision. So I see very clearly the stuff that I can see, and it's like 160% when the norm is like 100%. So I really have a very good eyesight. I have had very good eyesight, needed glasses, but turned 50 and just both of my eyes just went like poof. You know, there's like all sorts of debris floating around, and one of my eyes just has this puckered retina, and the other one too. It's not something scary like what can happen to diabetes or something. There's no retinal tears or something like that. They did tell me to be careful with that. And, you know, if certain things like that appear, how flashes and stuff, or if you see some sort of curtain thing appear, you really should pay attention. But yeah, the thing is, tangent, that 1080p screen, this is a 1080p by a 3000 something, which basically adds up to a 2K display. There's a lot of far more expensive displays that have a 4K resolution, but you know, I just upscale these the characters on it. And yeah, if I move in really close, I can see, with my vision, I can see the pixels. But for me, I think having a very high refresh rate, having a very low input lag, and if it's HD and up, I'm fine with that. I just don't like frame drops or inconsistent frame speeds and stuff like that. It's stuttering. I'm much more averse to that than a lower resolution. I am perfectly happy with a perfectly smooth playing PlayStation 1 game than with a PlayStation 2 game or a PlayStation 3 game that stutters. I really have issues with that. So, my eyes, being good anymore. I don't need that fancier screen. It's fancy, it's nice. It's a very high contrast ratio and stuff. Very nice response rate, but it doesn't need to be 4K or like super high resolution. Basically, you get away with playing this full screen with an RTX 3060 Ti, which is like the stuff of legends, rare as hen's teeth these days, or you have to buy, you have to pay like crazy amounts of money for that. I would never buy a graphics card for that price. I go to that MSRP plus something, which is doable. I would never have gotten it, for these crazy prices that they go for right now. But yeah, it's a good card. I mean, 3060 RTX Ti is basically quite a fair bit better than the RTX 2080 from the generation prior to that. So, and it has 8 gigabytes or 12 gigabytes of RAM. I'm really not sure actually, but it's fine playing very recent titles. 1080p, it's like two monitors, it's like two 27-inch monitors, basically. Yeah, it really plays them well. It can keep up, yeah, of course, with the Ryzen, it's like a beast of a system, beast of a CPU. I also got that at a discount. A lot of people are actually buying, the latest generation Ryzen CPUs. But they pay a fair high price for that. A lot of these go for 100 or 200 more, local currency, that is. And yeah, and people just aren't buying the 3000 generation Ryzens, and they're not that much slower actually. When you look at the multi-core performance, the newer ones are actually have a higher instructions per cycle, so they can do more with 1 megahertz than the 3000 series, the 5000 series. But yeah, the 3000 series can actually be had for a very nice price. Even the 2000 series Ryzen CPUs, and they all work on the same motherboards most of the time. And I think if you look at price performance, but also like power consumption and stuff, Ryzen actually beats Intel. But yeah, Intel, of course, always has been a gamer's choice. And I quite like the underdog. And I favored AMD because AMD was the underdog. Now, Intel seems to be the underdog, so I may have to switch alliances yet again. I'm not sure. No, I'm just sticking with my systems. But yeah, and this table over here, it's like there's no room for my feet to be. But yeah, I sit on this chair. I can swirl around my chair and just operate the system like that. And for now, it's an emulation rig that runs Windows 10 and a lot of emulators that I am actually preparing to be placed in the living room, in the entertainment system. Just use an Xbox One Bluetooth controller or another Bluetooth controller with it, launch box, and have just, PlayStation 2. It actually runs very well. GameCube, Saturn, Wii U and all that kind of stuff it doesn't do, but Wii, GameCube, PlayStation 2, even some PlayStation 3 stuff, it actually runs really well, even with the GT 1030 GPU in it with 2 gigabytes. Of course, running a 4K screen is asking a bit too much for it, but if you downscale it to 1080p, which actually basically the screen downstairs, I mean, it's so far away that if you set it to 1080p or 4K, I don't see the difference, because even with my resolution, so it's like all yeah, how do you say that, hype. If you walk up close, then you actually see the difference. So actually at close quarters, and perhaps even with smaller screens, like Retina-like screens, it actually pays to have 4K, but not really, not for all. Not everybody's eyesight is actually that good, and they can actually see the difference. A lot of people actually aren't able to tell the difference. Actually, what's actually quite funny is that these new graphics cards, these RTX graphics cards, and the AMD counterparts that actually are also not available for anyone to buy. Only the tech YouTubers actually have access to them. Yeah, like this. YouTube, great album. Oh, tangent. Let me see. Oh, yeah. That the difference between ray tracing and just regular old-fashioned techniques for rendering graphics, actually, a lot of people won't be able to tell the difference at all, because a lot of the more old-fashioned mapping, environmental mapping stuff, and baked-in shadows and all sorts of crap that just doesn't need all these fancy light optic calculations and stuff, actually works really well. A lot of games that you just don't see the difference that much. Perhaps if it evolves more, you'll be able to tell. But for now, actually, I didn't get a second generation, or was it a 2000 RTX graphics card series, because I had a 1660 Ti, which was actually a very good card without the RTX cores, so without the ray tracing, but it did have all the encoding and all the other features that the 2000 generation actually had. So it was quite a big improvement over my 750 Ti or 950 Ti that I had. So I actually was very, very keen to just use that. And the 2000 series just barely were faster, and the ray tracing features that they had, well, a 14 frames per second ray traced game just doesn't do it for me. It has to be fluid, so that means a solid frame rate, and I can live with 30. If you are familiar with console gaming, like PlayStation 3, perhaps more so than Xbox 360, but a lot of the consoles, that generation, actually introduced 30 frames per second gaming at HDR or HD resolutions. Before that, systems were just 60 frames per second, 50 frames per second, very fluid, very smooth. Perhaps the Nintendo 64 and the PlayStation, they actually were struggling sometimes because they really were pushing the hardware and didn't have all these consistent frame rates with all the games. But a lot, we were very spoiled with 60 frames per second game. I mean, Mega Drive, Super Nintendo, Super Famicom, Genesis, fantastic frame rates, very smooth gameplay, and I really had to get used to 60 frames per second gaming. PlayStation 2, excellent. PlayStation 2 and Dreamcast, they introduced 60 hertz PAL gaming for us. So away were the borders, away were the weird game speeds and stuff. So PlayStation 2, Dreamcast, that generation, Xbox also, to some extent. Microsoft really pulled a bad one on the Xbox, the original Xbox. I mean, NTSC systems are capable of component HD output, but PAL, just can't use component. I mean, the chips can, but the BIOS just doesn't allow you to output the screen at 60 frames per second component. All TVs that are component capable are capable of using 60 frames per second signals, and the games just sense which setting it is and just output at that frame rate, and the speed isn't that different, but the visuals are. So it's bad. But that generation PlayStation 2, Dreamcast, they really made the difference between PAL and NTSC go away. Great. And then the PlayStation 3 comes out, 30 frames per second in some games. Not all games, but quite a few. Perhaps not well-programmed games run at 30 frames per second. Now, the PlayStation 3, what is it, MSG, he did a great video on programming the PlayStation, how fast it is and how difficult it actually is to program for, because it's like this super multi-threaded, multi-core system, actually much like the Xbox 360 is, that if programmed well can actually be as powerful as the PlayStation 4, first PlayStation 4 generation. So yeah, really didn't reach full potential, despite the fact that it's been out for a long time. So good thing, because of a lot of the games not being programmed that well and running at 30 frames per second, actually the PlayStation 3 emulator on PC is able to keep up. The thing is that a lot of computers trying to emulate the PlayStation 3 sometimes can't keep up with the games because too many threads are actually needed. But an FX 8350, like Bulldozer, or what is it? I'm not sure. It's not yeah, I think it's Bulldozer. AMD processor with 4 cores, perhaps 8 cores, depending on who you believe, but 8 threads is actually capable of running games on the PlayStation 3 emulator, actually quite a fair bit better than some 4K Intel, 4-thread Intel systems, or with hyper-threading. It just needs a lot of cores, it needs a lot of threads, and because a lot of the games are actually programmed quite poorly, not taking full advantage of the PlayStation 3, you get decent performance, but there's actually quite a few games that don't run, that really use the hardware well, and I don't think that they run at 30 frames per second, but it has become the new norm, it's like totally opposite to what I prefer. I prefer very smooth, high refresh rate, smooth, ultra smooth frame rates and resolution, as long as it's smooth, or, you could have some filter over it or some extra processing, I'm fine with that, but I just don't fancy a very high resolution screen that just is a slideshow. It breaks the realism. So for me, the fluidity, the smoothness, it doesn't break the illusion that you're looking at something real. If you break it down and have a low frame rate, for me, that really makes it more like a slideshow or an old 8mm movie with a low frame rate, and of course, I think we're also very spoiled by the TVs, because if you hook up a PlayStation 3 to a 13-inch CRT, my Sony CRT, and you play a 30 frames per second game, it actually looks and feels better on such a small screen, and they just get away with that. And I'm not sure why that is, but you get away with a lower frame rate on a smaller screen for some reason. And if you put a PlayStation, the same game, on like a 75-inch TV, it's just horrible. And perhaps we're spoiled by watching HD content or 4K movies or something like that. But yeah, and perhaps not, because I still enjoy the Commodore 64, ZX Spectrum, MSX, all these retro systems, preferably on CRT, but with a good scaler or a good interface, or if the scaler on LCD TV is good and it doesn't introduce a ton of lag, yeah, it's doable. Even even in the wrong aspect ratio, that's also something very weird. I used to be very purist about the aspect ratio. 4:3 games, I prefer to play in 4:3. But sometimes not. Sometimes I find the black borders, and perhaps that's because I just got very allergic to. Is it still recording? Yes, it is. Allergic to black borders, like the old PAL gaming hideousness. That I actually prefer full screen, even stretched out to a 16:9 when it's actually 4:3. Weird, but it really doesn't look that weird. And sometimes I actually find it, and perhaps some film or cinematic purists find it hard to believe and weaken my vision, but sometimes I'm just looking at like, is this stretched or isn't it? And actually, of quite a few games, I believe Outrun 2006 is actually one of them. It defaults to 4:3, and then the screen, everything looks a bit like squashed a bit too much. So you think it's probably developed for a widescreen, and I believe the arcade was actually developed for a widescreen. But if you actually turn or run the game at a widescreen, it still doesn't look right. It looks stretched too much. So it's like this weird in between. And perhaps it's an NTSC thing, an NTSC resolution, but it's because that has a very slightly different aspect ratio than PAL. So there you go. It's like a complete tangent here, and I think it's time for my pickups video. Now, a little while ago, and I think it was me showing off Alien Breed and describing that and telling people about it being available digitally and stuff. Well, it's actually available physically too. It's available for 360, and I believe this is the only physical release of this trilogy, and it's actually very much worth it. The PlayStation 3 version, it's a digital download, but it plays at 30 frames per second. The Xbox 360 version, even the PAL version, it plays at 60 frames per second. And you notice, because the frame times are actually a lot lower, it's actually more responsive, and you have less input lag. It really feels more responsive at 60 frames per second. And this is die deutsche Fassung. Ein harter, brutaler und ernster Korridor-Shooter. Erlebe die ultimative Science-Fiction-Action mit der Alien Breed Trilogie. 3 Arcade-Shooter-Titel zum ersten Mal in einer explosiven Sammlung. Ich spreche kein Deutsch, noch nicht, ja, ich spreche ein wenig Deutsch, aber die fesselnde Shooter-Trilogie, komplett auf einer Disc. So it's the yeah, but it's the English version. It's like the PAL multi-language version. It comes with an Anleitung, which is a manual. Anleitung. It's really weird. Dutch and German. Dutch, the Germans call their language Deutsch. The Dutch call their language Nederlands or Hollands. A lot of countries get them mixed up. The Dutch, the Pennsylvania Dutch, are not Dutch, they're German. The scrubby Dutch around St. Louis, they're not Dutch, they're German. So, yeah, it's a bit of a thing. But what also is a bit of a thing is that Dutch and German are really crazily alike. When I was a kid, my uncle, my mom took care of him. He was single and he had alcohol problems and stuff, but it was a great uncle, Uncle Case. Uncle Case was just the balls. He had like German children's television. He had FilmNet and we used to go over to his place quite a lot, watch some movies, and he just enjoyed us talking. And he missed his children. He was divorced, and we were kind of, the closest thing to them, I guess. But I watched a lot of Sesamstrasse, which is Sesame Street, and I watched what's that with the chicken. Oh gosh, I really forget. The name of the German TV show was the name of a town. It was a virtual town, and there was a sequence in it where a chicken was wandering across the road and almost gets overrun by a truck, one of the cars that rides by. And for some reason, the first German I ever heard, I could just understand. And being exposed to German children's TV next to Dutch children's TV, for me, those languages weren't just that much different. So I really never had to put any effort into acquiring German. It was just there. So I was actually pretty good at it in high school. I just didn't have to study for it. A lot of the nouns and the verbs and everything, I get the accents. If I hear a German speak, I know which region they're from. Basically, I get everything. Speaking, I haven't, you just saw, I'm not the best at speaking German. I'm not sehr geübt, aber ich verstehe alles. And perhaps some really German-speaking viewers among you, if there are actually German viewers among you, you can actually see, or perhaps see if my German is, So Xbox Live. Xbox Live ist Ihre Verbindung zu mehr Spielen, Unterhaltung und Spaß. Weitere Informationen erhalten Sie unter, und dann Spelling, Xbox Live unter Anschließen. Bevor Sie Xbox Live nutzen können, müssen Sie Ihren Xbox 360 mit einem Breitband-Internetanschluss, beispielsweise DSL, verbinden und ein Xbox Live Mitgliedschaft abschließen. German nouns are just fantastic. There's a lot of nouns that are just, verbs and nouns that are just very different, but I like it a lot actually. And German songs, German rock music, German song texts are actually pretty cool. Nena, 99 Luftballons. The German version is much better than, the translated English version. But of course it made it more accessible. But first pickup, I'm just going on a tangent again. Alien Breed. It originated on the Amiga. It's a great top-down shooter. It's a stealth shooter. And if you play Alien Breed on the Amiga and you play this afterwards, you play this now, or vice versa, you play this and you check out the Amiga game, you really get a sense that it actually is the same game. You actually wander around a similar setting and you encounter all these aliens and you have to gather items and you have to perform certain tasks in a certain way. Puzzles, have to solve puzzles. Really amazing effort by Team 17, I believe. Yeah. They really captured the Amiga original in a great trilogy. And what didn't do it justice is that, it's on PC, it's on Steam. You can actually get this on Steam as well. Great game on PC. What really didn't do it justice is that, the story stretched out among 3 games. They were not expensive games, but yeah, the story stops and then it starts. You can actually play them out of sequence, which is good. Ein harter, brutaler und ernster Corridor-Shooter. Yeah, that's a hard, brutal, and ernster. Gosh, what is that? A difficult, I think, or something like that. Corridor shooter, or a real ernster. Ernsthaft. Sometimes I just can't come up with, and then sometimes I think, oh yeah, that's. But Yeah, it's not perfect, my German, but I tend to brag a bit perhaps. But yeah, great Alien Trilogy. If you like games like this, expandable, Millennium Soldier is very similar. This actually is like a twin stick shooter. That is, you move around and you aim with your sticks, but you shoot with a trigger. I actually prefer the aim and shoot at the same time. Um, Basically, Robotron on steroids, Berserk on steroids. Nex Machina, also a great game from Housemark. Housemark, if you are into your twin stick shooters, if you like, those great twin stick shooters that the PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4 are good at, and it's not Geometry Wars, it's by Housemark, and they really did do a great shooter on the PlayStation 5. And for me, I wasn't planning on getting a PlayStation 5, but it's like a PlayStation 5 exclusive. For me, that game might be the reason for me still going after a PlayStation 5 at some point, but I'm not going to get a PlayStation 5 at those crazy inflated prices. What I am afraid of is that perhaps the physical media PlayStation 5 that you can get now, not sure if they actually will offer that in a newer incarnation. It could be that all the shortages and stuff, they are actually going to use a different CPU in the new one that's probably coming out next year. That there will be significant changes from the first generation PlayStation 5, which is actually quite a fair step up from PlayStation 4 in some ways, not so much in other ways. But yeah, I'm afraid that the optical media option actually will get phased out. I'm not sure, but that's the only thing that actually makes me a bit anxious. What I'm not very keen on is the reports on the controller life for both the new machines, and PlayStation really is bad in that respect. I mean, the thumbsticks and the rubbers on the PlayStation 4 already were very bad quality, and it's really weird, but this controller, this wired controller, this is an Xbox 360 controller. The Xbox 360 was released, had its premiere in the Netherlands, in the Melkfabriek in Amsterdam. I got an Xbox 360 on release day. I'm still using that controller, and it still works. It has no issues, and I've used it a lot. There's no drift, there's no issues with it at all. Elise also had a controller for the Xbox. She just, it was just gone. But when Elise plays the video game, the controller screams, the controller cracks, the controller heaves in size under her gaming action. I'm different with the system, so perhaps my my controller ways are a bit more providing a longer life for the systems, but maybe my gameplay is so erratic and sparse, and yeah, that there's enough time to recuperate. Yeah. Oh, I just mentioned the internet I had. Fast internet, like 1 gigabyte up and down. I turned on the Xbox One, the video recorder model in downstairs. I wanted to play a game. I just wanted to see if Game Pass actually offered a way for me to play the original Halo, because I had been playing that on my laptop and also my Pentium 3 real machine, which I can also place over here in this corner if I want. I just grab it and stick it in. And I just figured, well, because I can't play it on my modern PC, emulating isn't really the way to use it. And it might be an offer with Game Pass on PC, but I figured, let's sit downstairs, turn on the Xbox One. There's a lot of classic Xbox 360 games on it that Elise really loves to play, has been playing.
I figured, yeah, let's turn on the Xbox One. It hasn't been turned on for a while, and yeah, I shouldn't get bothered by the update. It's like it should be fine. I have high speed internet. It'll work. Turn it on, and it wanted to update the OS. Okay, well, fine. It updates the OS. Okay, well, cool. It went a bit faster than normal, but not really, how do you say that, congruent with the internet speed that I actually am getting. So it's like severely bottleneck the speed or dialed down. Really annoying. And then I find the Halo Master Chief thing, and I sigh a relief because, yeah, it's installed on the system, it's big, and then it wants to update, and it's like 25 gigabytes. So, I'll just leave it, and just let it update. And yeah, like usual, I end up doing something completely different, not playing the game I wanted to play. It's a big thing on these modern consoles. I hoped that the speedier internet that we got, basically because of Elise working from home a lot, and actually fiber optic internet being a lot more dependable, and you don't have to reset the router or anything. It just works more so than ADSL, or ADSL that didn't work at all, but cable internet. I mean, there's one cable internet provider that we have access to, and that's Ziggo. There's a lot of bonuses, and it's good. They had a good service, but there used to be a lot of outages, and always they blame the customers. It's like the cabling in your house is not good enough, and then it's good, and then you buy some other cables, and then it's good, and then it just fails again, and then you have to buy new cables. It's always the cables, and it's always your fault and not theirs, and it's really weird. And I think a lot of these things have to do with them changing the frequencies of the just really pushing the copper, and having more and more interference between all the signals that they want to cram through, with a lot of interference from other household appliances, or Wi-Fi signals or something like that. Really signals that shouldn't interfere, and then you just have these issues. And fiber optic, well, you just don't have any interference, and the cabling I pull through every system, the living room, the entertainment area has an Ethernet jack, and everything is plugged in. Elise's study has an Ethernet jack, and everything is plugged in, and a little nice switch. Over here, I've got a wire plugged in, and in the game room, I also have a wire, and very nice Netgear switches. Cool Gigabyte switches, works well. And these Asus wireless routers, I actually had a Wi-Fi backbone with a hidden SSID, doing things with Wi-Fi that you probably shouldn't do with Wi-Fi. And then you had your NAS systems not being I mean, it worked, and yet it didn't. There would be one DNS server, one gateway, fixed IP addresses and stuff, and still your NAS wouldn't be reachable all the time for some systems, while other systems could reach. It's like totally weird, and I was getting so fed up with that. And if you switch to wired Ethernet, it just works. All the systems that are turned on are visible. It just works until you want to do AI mesh. Until you want to do something Wi-Fi thing with a high brand, Asus brand, and they're just like, yeah, their mesh situation, their Wi-Fi mesh is actually the best you can get if you want to go consumer, and this is what you're gonna need, and this is what you're gonna get. And the moment you turn it on and you do everything, and you reach and you research, and it's like all this old thing about old biases and new versions that just don't work. People they want to downgrade the flash. They want to down flash their routers, and Asus just at first permitting it, but then just prohibiting it, and them stating it doesn't work officially, and then them still offering the same routers, with boxes like dual routers that just are known to work with AI mesh. probably with specific firmware versions on it. People telling about their network, their carefully constructed mesh network instantly failing the moment the BIOS is updated, like that kind of stuff. What really bugged me was that everything would work fine, even without AI mesh, but my setting would work fine. And then at some point, without any known reason, my systems, my media bridges, they just wouldn't connect. There would be like, the connection would drop. I had to reset them. It really, there was a lot of dropped connections, and really, issues would pop up, and then you would look at the web interface, and then you would see that there were BIOS upgrades, and the things that they solved often didn't have anything to do with the issues I was having. But it's like programmed cell death, it's like programmed obsolete. Was it obsolescence? Yeah, like you make your devices obsolete. You force people into believing that they really need this BIOS update, because if they don't, the systems fail. And it's not because there's all sorts of things wrong with it, but just because they somehow like seem to program it in. It's like a feature that they turn on. And if you have ACES router thingies, accessories from a certain generations, then you get BIOS upgrades, but then they just won't communicate that well anymore, and it's like they get obsolete, and then it's like they really want you to get the newer and the newer and the newer gear. So I'm actually quite happy with it's like a big Spire thing. ACES router, the A5300, which really works well, but as a standalone router, but you don't want to have it communicate with other ACES Wi-Fi devices, because all the things that you want to do with them, unless a media bridge. But this media bridge, it's bound to fail. And I always have the systems on manual BIOS updates, because unless it's really mandatory and there's like security issues and stuff, if it ain't broke, I don't want to fix it. So I just don't want a BIOS update if it's not needed. And I'm perfectly happy with the stuff that's working. So everything is on manual. There's no, I can imagine things going wrong if the router updates, and you really do want to update your router if there's security issues. But if the router bit updates, you want to have the clients also update, because otherwise it just doesn't work. But yeah, that really bugs the hell out of me. It's not dependable enough to actually invest a lot of money in. So yeah, I go wired and I just forget about the Wi-Fi. And the thing is, at least really, she's at the end of the house, furthest away from the big, humongous router and the Wi-Fi signal. So she really suffers, because the laptop just doesn't have the right speed. She can't use the Wi-Fi that much, so she has to go downstairs sometimes for she really needs to plug in an Ethernet cable and plug in her laptop. Just plug it in and have it accessible, and just on some sort of spring, and just plug it in. I should look into that. So she just doesn't really need Wi-Fi. But Wi-Fi is so bad that sometimes when she's in the house and everything seems to be connected, she actually is using up her mobile data plan, because for some reason the phone jumps to 4G, because 4G, which is known to be very bad reception in my neck of the woods, our town, is like a black hole when it comes to cellular reception. If you call me, you'd better call me twice, because if you think I'm not picking up, or you don't get the connection, or you get engaged signal, call me again right afterwards, because I didn't receive any call. I wasn't in a call, but I just didn't get any signal. And the second call I get, that's my first call, and then you have a conversation. So call me twice. But that's a different story, another tangent. Now, I did get a whole series of PlayStation 4 discs in anticipation of the physical PlayStation 5 because it turns out that a lot of the versions that are on physical PlayStation 4 media actually end up working sometimes better than the digital versions or the updated versions. Of course, they fixed that, but you can say that the PlayStation 5 actually runs a lot of PlayStation 4 software really, really well. Just like the Xbox Series X, the new one, they run PlayStation, but there's a level of 360 games that they really improve on. Well, a lot of Xbox One games that they really improve on. So yeah, and games that I really like and that are very important to me, I decided that, you know, I'm not collecting a lot of stuff anymore, and a lot of stuff is in storage, or I actually sold it, and it's like I've really slimmed down my collection, which is still vast. You know, it still features a ton of Coleco, MSX, Intellivision, Commodore 64, Atari, the Atari consoles, you know, Nintendo, all the consoles, the GameCube, but I actually sold a lot of the double stuff and a lot of the stuff that I just, you know, didn't need. So the games that really mean a lot, I keep, and that's the Mary Kondo thing. You know, if I get a happy feeling, yeah, then I keep it, and if it's like all thoughts and difficult things and planning, and you know, I just get rid of it. But these are PlayStation 4 games that mean a lot to me, and that I really want to have in physical form. So I might have access to them at some point in time when everything fails. It's a post-apocalyptic setting, but for some reason, apart from the big EMS surge that actually fried all systems on the planet, for some reason in a post-apocalyptic setting, I managed to recreate a working PlayStation 4, and I use scales of a very rare deep sea fish with a neural network as a replacement 4K display, you know, that kind of stuff. Then I'm able to play Horizon Zero Dawn, the complete edition. I've been playing through this on PC, but on PlayStation 5 this will run really well. And well, yeah, it was a discount, a very big discount, because it was like on offer for digital download on the PSN, but the digital discount, the PlayStation Hit series, which, you know, I'm not, how do you say it? I'm not a snob. I'm not a collector snob. You know, I just don't give about PlayStation Hits. A game is a game, physical media, who cares, you know? I'm over that. And then The Last of Us Remastered. I got the first one. I believe the second one is really sad, but the first one, post-apocalyptic setting also, I still have to play it. I have never played through it. This actually originated on the PlayStation 3, I think. And this is a remastered version. And yeah, Naughty Dog, I really wanted to have that. They're still sealed. And then God of War, at least played through it. And it's really funny because there's some weird cross wires in my brain that there's quite a bit of snow at the beginning, and there's this boy and a father, and then you have Horizon Zero Dawn, and you have this girl with her adoptive father, and you know, all sorts of thing. There's a death, and you know, a lot of similarities. Puzzle game, great stuff. Santa Monica Studio, God of War. This is a great game, very good game. It's like Lara Croft come Horizon Zero Dawn, God of War. It's like, yeah, really jives with me. And then a platformer. I seem to have and it's really weird, but it happened with me with Mario 64. Mario 64 to me made platformers become so different than everything that I've known before. Of course, you had your platformers on the NES, You had your platformers on the Commodore 64, which isn't the best system for platformers, but there's like later releases like Mayhem in Monsterland, great platformer. There's also a couple of classics that also have a great series on the Amiga. You know, the Commodore 64 really has had some nice platformers, but 3D platformers really is a different genre that I really learned to appreciate with Mario 64 at first. I think third-person perspective games are actually more my thing than first-person perspective games. And I think in God of War, it's like a third-person perspective game. This, I think it is too. I'm not sure. This for sure is. This for sure is. And this also. So third-person perspective games is the thing. Even racing games. I used to be an in-car view all the way gamer for racing games. Even sometimes, you know, with the screen squashed and you're looking through these virtual windscreen with all the stuff and gubbins hanging, and you have a bit of the dashboard displayed. Even at some point played Outrun 2 coast to coast from within the car. I think Dave Webster also plays Outrun from the in-car view. Cigarelli I played from the in-car view. There is a more direct sense of control, less, how do you say that, less, better, I'm just super tired actually, by the way. But yeah, so for some reason I tend to go third-person view on racing games as well. I really like Outrun 2 third-person perspective. So for some reason, something in my brain just changed. Doom, I loved. Quake, I loved. But now it's like Gears of War. Yeah, I dig it. Halo, can you turn it third person? Yeah, third person is like, yeah, I really like it. So, Ratchet and Clank, it originated on the PlayStation 2. I think, yeah, it did. I was just absolutely blown away by the PlayStation 3 version of the game. Oh, this is actually also, this is auch, oh no, this is Action Gadgets, Rare Aliens. Ga op een gloednieuwe spannende reis met het leukste duo van het heelal en ontdek hoe de twee elkaar oorspronkelijk hebben ontmoet. So this is the first game and this is Dutch. En dan Action Apparaten. Abgefahrene Aliens schließe dich dem artigsten Duo der Galaxie und einem brandneuen Spiel an, das die Geschichte ihres ersten Aufeinandertreffens nacherzählt. So, the way they meet up. And then, attenzione, gadget alien accompagna due tra i più epici eroi della galassia in un nuovo gioco che ripercorre gli eventi esplosivi della loro prima avventura. Yeah, it's Italian. I really have to get into that, but yeah, I studied a bit of Italian as well. It was like accompagna due tra i più epici eroi della galassia un nuovo gioco che ripercorre gli eventi esplosivi della loro prima avventura. And then French, de l'action des gadgets et des aliens bizarres, embarqués dans les aventures de l'une des plus grands duos des héros de la galaxie dans un tout nouveau jeu qu'on reprend l'histoire de leur première rencontre. C'est français. So yeah, you can't live in Europe without actually trying to speak or trying to fake to speak beaucoup de langues, many languages. So yeah, these are my pickups. Pickups. I'm doing pickups. Now I should actually do an electric adventure and play through all these games or pick one of those games. I'm actually too tired for that. yeah, you have to go watch Electric Adventures for those. He's good at them. And yeah, let me see. I'll lift up this little cover. So I've been having a waffle for 52 minutes. Oh gosh, it's only been 52 minutes, which is good. Which is good because before that there was this little introduction. So yeah, basically you have now this room introduction where I waffle about the items that are in my room, you know, all over the place, like ancient stereo equipment, Amiga things, Marie Kondo, RGB lights, cows, yeah, poos, CD players, Nixie clocks, console and PC gaming as we know it, ray tracing versus regular, I forgot what the term is, but like the regular way of rendering video games and stuff really is a bit overrated, I think, ray tracing, but and ray tracing is possible even without RTX or, you know, like super fancy NVIDIA Radeon cards. Pick up games, yeah, paraphernalia. Less is more. That's the thing. Less is more in many ways. Less clutter means more space, means more peace of mind. It allows you to be less distracted, focus more on a thing. You know, if I pick up a CD, if I play a CD, pick up it from the cabinet, look at the artwork, I place it in the player, the CD player, I press play, I look through the manual, look through the booklet, I listen to it, I sit and I listen to it, and I'm not distracted by playlists or song text or all sorts of information that these or other streaming services want to throw at you. Yeah, that's something that I find really mindful, and I can enjoy the music much better. Autoplay, YouTube, that just instantly wants me to present me another video or another video or another video. Netflix, that just kills the credits, the end credits, and just wants to instantly present me with yet another movie. I just want the movie to finish. I just want the end credits. I just want the music. I just want the cameo ending stuff, the extra stuff. I just want to read the movie babies, the sadly passed part away. I just want to see how many Marks participated in a movie. Always very interesting. Mark, a very well-known name. Very many Marks around the world. I was in a single classroom with 5 Marks at some point, repeatedly for years in high school. Very interesting when a lot of you teachers just addressed you with your first name, and having 5 Marks in the classroom is actually quite interesting. Even when they have last names that are very similar even. So yeah, good fun. Always was a bit of a thing to see if you actually got graded correctly and the grades that you got were actually not for the wrong mark. It's a bit of a thing, a bit of an identity crisis, I think. Really, I am on a tangent, and I'm more on a tangent than ever before. I think, or not. It's just a regular mark. I'm really thirsty, and I'm going to drink Grols. Since 1615, it's a very old beer brand. A lot of people will just, like, it doesn't feature alcohol. It only features the sugars contained in the lemons and not the extra, because basically this is just sugar water for a lot of the brands. But this is 0 alcohol, 0 added sugars, only the fruit sugar. So it's sweet, but not, like artificially sweet or like give me diabetes the moment I finished this can. Oh gosh, I just had a 10 work hour day. I've had them for like the past week and this week. Past week I had only one. I had my birthday and then, they're long hours. I only work 3 days a week right now, which is good. No night shifts. They banned night shifts for me because I really am not capable of doing that anymore. So no night shifts and no on calls, filling in for colleagues, running 3 departments where I only should run one. I've had it. So yeah, it's better for me to just do my thing. And I find that actually works a lot better than me doing 1,000 things at once, because yeah, it's not something I'm really good at. I find out. I mean, I was good at it, but it cost me a lot of energy, and I was hiding it very well, and then it turned out to be ADHD. Very complicated story. It's not a fashion thing. I'm not very keen on, getting diagnosed, throwing around diagnoses. But it really is a bit of a thing, being a shrink, not knowing that you actually have a diagnosis yourself, that you actually treat, and that you actually, treat and talk about with a lot of your patients. And it's actually quite interesting that I now know why, with certain patients, I really have a connection and a complete understanding, and why certain patients actually really think I'm a good doctor, because I understand them so well. Basically, because I have their disease, like an experienced co-patient that actually treats other patients at some point, which is, I think, makes me a better shrink, actually. But yeah. Anyways, tangent. Tomorrow it's a day off. I do have to take the car to the MOT. It's Elise's car, but I promised to take it. My car is about to get serviced on next week, which is like the big service thing, like what is it, 200,000 kilometer thing, or is it 100,000? No, 200,000. I think it really has a lot of mileage, but it's like a diesel car, so there's a lot of mileage in it left. They have to look at the AC. They have to, well, that's the only thing, the AC, I think, and then they have to service it. They have to change the tires, the seasonal tires. There's winter tires on it, and now with summer tires. But that's gonna be quite some hefty waiting time thing. So yeah, not sure. Perhaps we'll just go for a walk. If Elise decides to come with me, perhaps she just wants to work a bit more. Procrastinating, not swallowing the frog on time. Time management really is hard working from home. And then, yeah, I had my first jab a couple of weeks ago. I really got sick from it unexpectedly, because I thought, well, I had it, so my immune system shouldn't respond to it like it did, but it did. And I'm very glad I got my jab, and the second one I'm going to have in a little under a month's time. And I've rearranged. I'm getting the jab in the morning, and I have a working day, and the day after I'm off. I switched that around so that if I get another spell of side effects or something, then it's not going to affect any appointment with patients or clients and stuff, and I'll just be sick in my own time and be ready to go back to work on Monday. So yeah, that's a good thing. So, and it will make it possible. My mom actually got her second jab already, but it will make it possible to get to meet up with mom and just visit and have these family things happen again, because let's face it, it's been a very weird months with all the changes that are happening. And actually, if you look at the world today and how people respond, and yeah, it really is a different time than the 90s or the 80s or the 70s. It's really, yeah, every decade has its thing. And I really didn't think that the 90s were that different from the noughties, and I didn't think the noughties were very much different from the teens. What is it? Yeah. But then I think the last 4 to 5 years, things really changed. And yeah, I'm still getting my head around it. Anyways, Mark signing off. I'll upload the video, and well, you can hopefully comment, like, subscribe, comment, and do all sorts of things. Be interactive. I like that. If you hear something that you want to ask me something about, please do. I might do a follow-up and, respond. I might type a response. I love the interaction. And I believe there's light signals coming from the landing, which means that Elise probably does not want to interfere, like interrupting and talking and stuff. But I think she wants to signal me something. Perhaps we should finish off the evening together, sitting on the couch, watching some movie or bit or whatever, and enjoy some personal time before heading off to bed. So and I heard a little laughter, which you might have heard as well, and she actually makes some rhino noises at the moment. But yeah, I think there's definite purpose in that light signal. And so I'm going to terminate the video and not terminate you. Hope to see you in another video. Bye bye. Hope to see you next time. Thanks for watching.